Welcome to the Dive Table. I'm Jay Gardner, and with me, as always, is Sarah Miller. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Daniel, our producer, let me know that I am allowed to have a fan on for these recordings. So I have a little bit of airflow today. It's not going to be as sweaty of a podcast as last episode, so I'm feeling fabulous.
That's
How are
great. I
you?
thought it was kind of your trick. Put yourself in the pressure cooker, and then you produce better content. Was the trick here? I was like, oh, maybe I should try that out. But no, I'm glad you can have a fan because hyperventilating during a podcast is probably not a good idea.
Well, I just remember, obviously Daniel is much better at producing, sound production than I am, because I did a video for my YouTube channel once. It was so hot. I was in California and it was so hot. And I was doing a video talking about dry suits, right? And I had a fan on for that. And I got multiple comments about how annoying the fan was. So obviously I just didn't do a good job editing it. But that's why I've always shut it off since then, because I'm like, I don't want the content to sound annoying, like no one's gonna stick around for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, feeling
Yeah,
good.
there's nothing worse than a podcast with bad audio, right? You turn it up
Yeah.
in your car, and then all of a sudden you have bad audio or pops. So, thank you, producer Daniel, for making us sound good at least. And I'm glad again you can have a fan because that would not be nice to sit in the hot box to
Yeah,
do a podcast recording.
totally. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a bit tired, and I'm really itching to go diving. It's been a few weeks now, a little longer than that,
What?
and it's just been like the stars will have to align during this season because we've had so much rain and king tides and this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
So it's like you have a window, and if you're not available during that window, then the window closes and there's another week that passes. And so we were going to go diving last week. And of course, we get up in the morning, we're ready to go, and starts raining. So you can't go in the ocean when it's raining, or I
What?
shouldn't say you can't. You shouldn't go in the ocean when it's raining. In fact, I went and
I
looked
do
up
that all the
the
time.
recommendations. Yeah. The recommendation was 72 hours after a rain event to get
Hmm.
in the water, and they were tracking the data from multiple sources, but around basically the runoff and things that go into the ocean, which is just gross, but a
Yeah.
reality for people getting sick, flu-like symptoms after being in the ocean after a rain. So again, you can push that to 48 hours or whatever you're comfortable with, or be in there during the rain. But the recommendation, according to the EPA, was 72 hours after a rain event. Then you can get back in the water. So it's interesting,
Wow.
but also just has been killing my diving. And
Right.
I've been in the pool like 4 times just to get wet, and it's ridiculous. Like there's only so much you can do with a 9 foot pool where you're like, okay, I love being in the water. This is good. I got like an hour in the water, but it's a pool still. Like there's only so much. Like I want to go back in the ocean. So I'm
Right.
itching. I'm dying. All the stress levels go up. Everything happens when I don't go diving. So it's time.
So that must be specific to shore diving. You're talking about runoff and getting sick. Yes.
Yes, likely.
Okay. Because I was
Yes,
like,
like
I've
it's shore
definitely,
diving
like, I've gone diving in the rain so many times, but I just was thinking about it. It's always off of a boat.
off a boat. Yeah, you can go off a boat, and that's all good. But shore diving, because of the runoff, and they talk about and again, this is a whole. We should do a whole episode on this, but because it was fascinating to me. But
Yeah.
the
I would love
runoff
to
that
do that.
happens, not only from the sewage and things like that can get in the water, but pesticides, animal, stuff, so on and so forth, all can wash in. And especially when it's a significant rain event like we're having, the last few times it's rained. This is like supposed to get a year's worth of rain in like 3 days, which is crazy. So
I've
when that
seen that.
happens, things overflow. There's a whole organization that focuses on testing the water after rain events, and also identifying the things that are there. They're like shopping carts and all sorts of things wash up on the shore. So yeah, not a good idea to go shore diving after it's a big rain event in the ocean.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm still such a new shore diving diver that I had never even thought of that, but it absolutely makes sense. I mean, land is disgusting with everything that's going on here, so makes
I had
sense.
this weird epiphany the other day too. So dumb, and people are probably going to totally make fun of me about this, but I had this thought. We were driving, it's pouring down rain. I have all the girls with me in the car, and it's raining, and we were talking about how, the clouds actually suck up the water from the ocean and then bring it over the land, and that's what causes the rain. And one of my daughters was like, yeah, that's why it's so salty. I'm like, well, actually, the doesn't have salt, because remember, if we hold salt, will it drop or will it float up? No, it will drop. Yeah, so it can't go up into the clouds. Anyways, this whole conversation was ongoing, and it just had this stupid thought where it's like, oh, this is such an equalization. It takes the water from the ocean, it drops it back over the land. Any water that goes back into the ocean, it's kind of a net zero sum, except for the water that soaks into the aquifers down below into the land. It was like, oh, wow, nature's such an amazing, equalizer of things. And that was my thought as I'm driving by myself. And of course, I have 3 young children that I have this thought with. And I almost opened my mouth and started to say, isn't this amazing? How about? And I was like, no, just hold it to myself. So it's the first time I've mentioned out loud since that conversation in the car.
Well, it's like, that, right? But then there's that moment of appreciation, right? I get that all the time when I'm out on the road, like in nature. You just look around and you're like, wow, like just it's sort of an awe moment, and being really present of like, there's magic in this planet, like in this world. It's incredible.
Yes, agreed. Well, we have rambled. This is good opening. Now I want to do an episode on shore diving, water runoff into the ocean, and water qualities, and start talking this whole different series for later. But that would
Let's
be
find
awesome
a scientist
series.
for that, like somebody who like legit knows what's up. We're gonna put it in the list.
Good call. Good call.
All right, so today we're going on to episode 2. If you listened to last episode, we discussed our experience and trajectory through the recreational courses. I shared my story, Jay shared his, and so today we're doing episode 2 of diving into our professional level courses. And I think this is going to be another interesting conversation because we've gone through very different paths, and I'm excited to share what I've learned through it, because as with my recreational experience, I made a ton of mistakes. So I love sharing these things so that hopefully somebody else doesn't suffer as much as I did.
Me too. Yes.
So why don't since I kicked off last one, why don't you start? Because we were blabbing on my story for like half an hour. So let's get you in this.
Oh, I loved it though. I loved it. Feel free to interrupt at any point with my story and ask me questions or add 2 cents, because it's an interesting one. But
let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, becoming a pro was, I don't want to say it was a foregone conclusion for me, because it wasn't, but I love teaching. It's what I do when I'm not in scuba. It's what I do, period, right? It's where I'm at my best. I think we talked about that on one of the episodes of, where I feel like I'm at my best. And so when I'm teaching out of passion and something that I care about, I'm at my best. So, it was not a foregone conclusion, but it was one of those things in the back of my mind, even in my open water class, of like, someday this might happen. And of course, at that point in my career, my early diving career, getting yelled at from the course director, all the other fun stuff.
My mind, by the way, my mind is still blown by that story. Like, if those of you listening, if you haven't listened to that, go back and check out that episode, because that, like, wild.
Yeah. So obviously I didn't come out of my open water class feeling super confident that I could ever even get there. But I saw that I refer to the chart on the wall, and I mean it. I literally looked at and studied the chart on the wall. That's what it looked like to me for the steps. And so
the different levels, right? The PADI steps through the courses.
Yeah, and I think all organizations have those,
right.
That ladder up to instructor, and the first kind of official rung, it feels like, dive master, is quite a hefty word, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a dive master and you're responsible for other divers. I mean, it's a big deal. So, so I looked at all that, and then luckily for me, my journey through all of that did not turn into a zero to hero, and that had nothing to do with whether or not I wanted it to or not. It was really all about the fact that for me, as we talked about in the recreational courses, at some point I kind of stopped and realized this wasn't working for me. I wasn't getting better, and looked for other things. Obviously, did the hack it together myself, and then eventually found the agency that I now am a part of, called UTD. And so when I joined UTD, it really opened up my eyes to the fact that the skills that I was building weren't solid yet. Things that I knew I wasn't there, but now it gave me a measurement and a bar and feedback on the pieces that weren't there. And so I spent about a year in UTD's coaching program and just working on my own diving. So that's everything from, buoyancy and precision control there to, common emergency skills, gas shares, shooting an SMB is not an emergency, but it's a skill. Everything from that to the team diving, dive planning, expedition work that I was doing. And the story of how I entered into leadership there is actually quite interesting, because I thought I'd be on that path, and I'd let my coach know, at some point when you think I'm ready, and I'm going to put that in your hands, not in my hands. When you think that I'm ready to start that education, let me know and let's have that discussion. But I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to set goals towards it. I'm just going to allow somebody else to have that trust of when they think I'm ready to handle that from both a personal skills perspective, critical skills perspective, and knowledge perspective, experience. Then let's go with it. I'm going to trust that. And I had a strong trust with my coach. And so again, it just seems like Scuba happens around Christmas for me. But one Christmas, my wife says, "Oh, there's one more present for you." I'm like, "Oh," she's like, "but it's over here on the phone." Like, okay. And so she pops open the phone, and there's a video from the CEO of UTD saying, "Hey, Jay, you put in a ton of hard work and la, 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 really, really nice video that says, hey, and we'd like to welcome you into the UTD leadership program. Congratulations, you made it to the
That's
leadership
so
program, and we
cute.
start next week or whatever it is." And I was blown away. I was like, oh, okay. Because it wasn't something I was necessarily working towards. It was something I said, when it comes, it will come. And the story behind that, again, my wife is incredible, is that she had called him and said, "Hey, I want to give Jay diving for Christmas." And she had looked up some diving sites that were, what you could find on the internet. And he graciously steered her away from some of those things and said, maybe a better spend, a better way to do this is I think he's ready for the leadership program. Why don't we give that to him as a Christmas gift for his diving? And she said, yeah. So they did the whole video and cohort, it's been amazing. So that's
Oh
how
my
I entered
gosh.
leadership.
Your wife is just, I cannot wait to meet her. What a gem.
Oh yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. Yeah, we try to, we realized in our relationship, not to get into a relationship, but I think one of the things that makes our bond work and has made it work for, gosh, how many years now? Been together 15 years, something like that. Is
Beautiful.
I knew for me, I wanted to be with her regardless of whatever format that was. Let's put it that way. Whether I was her friend, whether I was a acquaintance, whatever, I just wanted to be around her and support her in some way. And I think she felt the same way about me. And so we're very different people, and we're very different interests. And, how do I know what she wants to order on a menu? It's exactly what I wouldn't order. So it's clear. It's like, oh, what does she want? Whatever sounds gross to me is like, yeah, that's what she's going to order. And probably the opposite's true for her. So we're very different from that perspective, very different in our interests and things. But like, I want to support her. That's my goal in our marriage and in our relationship. And she has done the same for me. And it's been awesome in that sense that we're able to have things like this happen. So again, not a model relationship by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been very lucky in that my spouse is supportive of my diving, but never will be a diver. And in some ways that's a bummer. In other ways, great. It makes family vacations really tough. I'll tell you that with young
Yeah.
kids right now. But other than that, it's great. And sometimes, when she says, "Hey, maybe you should go diving," gently, I know I'm like a stress ball waiting to explode. Like how I am right now. It's like, oh, that gentle nudge. Hey, you should go diving is like, hey, you're a stress ball that needs to like go do your own thing. So go be on
It's
your own
that
path for a
you're
minute.
driving me crazy. Go away for a little while.
Exactly. Go underwater where we cannot see you, hear you, be contacted from you for a little bit, and then come back. Because it's
Oh, that's
true.
great.
Every time I come back from diving, it's like everything, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just the weightlessness and my neural pathways are being rewired for that moment. I don't know, but when I get out of the water,
Dopamine
diving
hits.
has that effect. The dopamine effects, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Cool.
back to professional.
Yes.
Side note on my wife. I'll have to send my wife this podcast. I don't think she listens to the podcast. She's like, "Oh, it's all about diving. Like, what do I want to listen to you talk? Listen to you talk all the time." So that's how I got into leadership. And one of the things with the program that I chose to be a part of, UTD, is the standards for personal skills are very high. And actually it's a double-edged sword in some ways. To meet those standards, you need to really be in control, period. Right. And there's not a lot of tolerance. So, say what you will about artificial numbers or whether it's important or not to, your everyday diving. And that's the debate. But when it comes to the standards for showing others how to dive, I think the standard should be high. And so for us, it was, holding buoyancy or position, not just buoyancy. So forward, backward, up, down, position within a few inches. And that's measured, right? It's not just, oh yeah, it looks kind of good. It's measured. It's being in control of your students in a live setting. We don't do follow me dives, meaning, hey, I'm swimming ahead and everyone does what I'm going to do. No, we need to let the students dive and be able to see 3 or 4 steps ahead of them and be in control of that situation. It was about, learning how to balance what you correct underwater, what you correct on the surface, and what you correct in video review. And learning how to do a video review, a meaningful video review that causes correlation to real diving, not just, your finning technique is a little off here. Well, who cares? What does that matter to a real dive? What's the effect of that? How do you play that out? How do you have a story to tell about that? And then there was, just a depth of dive theory, and things that we went through, everything from, gas density, bubble sizes, standard gas. Depth of dive theory that we had to go through. And so I started my education in that way and worked really, really hard on it, because from the academic standpoint, I got it. A fast learner in that sense. But I remember in one of the first, it's a long story we can come back to later, but one of the first real situations where I was being evaluated, I remember getting under the water, and it was this thing called a skills camp. We had all these students in a pool. It was unclear who was supposed to do what from a professional standpoint. All of a sudden, I was looked at as the one that needs to do something. The story was, I'll just tell it because it's funny. There's an instructor who's an OG instructor within UTD, and actually their podcast is awesome if you ever listen to it, called the Great Dive Podcast. But a guy named James Mott, and James and I have become friends since then. But I started out not liking him very much, and I'm sure he didn't think very highly of me at first, because we're at this skills camp, and the funny little side story. Now you can look back and laugh, but it was unclear, right? I was not an instructor. I was not a dive master. I was an IDC candidate. And so I was there in my mind to be a tank monkey, right? I'll carry tanks. I'll do whatever you need. The instructors are the instructors. Let them do it. And I'll be there to observe. And when an instructor tells me to do something, to demonstrate a skill or to whatever it would be, then I'll do it. That was my mindset. Well, we, get in the water progressively, and people were working on personal skills, working on breathing for buoyancy. Eventually it leads to them actually gearing up and practicing those skills. and you look in the pool and it's just a circus. I mean, it's just a circus. People moving this way, that way, down the swim lanes. There's no structure to anything, blah, blah, blah. And I'm, at some point, someone comes up to me, oh, I want to try different fins. I have my fins off. I have, my mask to somebody else, whatever. These things are all out and about. I'm just standing there in the middle of the pool, observing all the chaos, going, gosh, this looks like chaos. And James came up to me and says, hey, nudges me and says, hey, this is quite a clown show. And I looked at him and said, yeah, it is a clown show. And my thought was like, what are you going to do about it, instructor? And that was the end of that interaction. And then like 5 minutes later, he goes, hey, Jay, this is quite a clown show. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, me? Like, what do you want me to do about it? And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to do something here? So I literally had my gear floating on the, like, it was like flip on my gear, like my long hose is trapped behind my back, like just look a mess, don't have fins on, nothing, and like dive under the water and try to like gain some control of the situation, bring people up to the surface and get them all organized on stuff. And of course, my evaluation, though, like, his gear's not even set up correctly. La la la. Like what a asshat clown of an IDC candidate we have here. And I was, at the time, I was really pissed about it, right? Because it was like, look, this was unclear, and you're not setting me up to succeed. You're setting me up to fail. And I don't think it was intentional. Now that we've talked about on James's part, he wasn't clear, and he's thinking, hey, these IDC candidates need to show, be in control. And I'm thinking, hey, these instructors need to be in control, and big miss. And that whole skills camp was just a really big struggle. The students had a great time, delivered a ton of value to them. It was a really cool event, pioneering event in Scuba. But for me, from a professional standpoint, it was a train wreck, and it was demoralizing. And it was, all the things that you'd feel of that you failed. I felt I failed, and yet I didn't even know what the standard was to fail to, but I know I failed, right? So where did I fail? It wasn't like I didn't nail a skill and, man, if I could only got that right. It was the whole thing I screwed up somehow, and I didn't even know how. And so that really shook me and really caused a moment of, do I really want this? Do I really want to do this or not? Because, I could go to another agency and be an instructor next week. Is this really worth it? Why would I put myself through this? And, it was a big question. And to UTD's credit, and now I'm co-owner of the company. So before then I was not. I was simply a student, an IDC candidate, all that stuff. I communicated how I felt, and I was there with a cohort of other IDC candidates, and I remember commiserating with them at the end of it, because we failed, all of us. We didn't know how. But I remember one of the guys who's now become one of my really good friends, he's like, I just need a moment. And he saw, I don't know, a donut store, Yum Yum Donuts, whatever it was. He's like, I'm going in there. And I was like, okay. He goes and he bought like a dozen donuts. And I remember just sitting by the pool of this hotel eating donuts like we were like some, like, I don't know, we failed miserably. So
emotional sad. Therapy donuts.
Yeah, just like pounding donuts by the side of this pool, and talking about, how, crappy of an experience all this was. Anyway, it was quite funny. But we communicated, and I communicated that back to UTD. And to UTD's credit, they said, and I think there's a whole episode a while ago on this, they said, yeah, we effed up. Yeah, we made a mistake. We tried to do something that never been done before in a different structure, and we failed you guys. The other stuff went well, but you, as what we intended, we failed you, and sorry. And now my job is to make it better. And I had to make the decision. Do I trust that? Do I want this? Do I not? Or do I punt and move on? And it was a really tough decision at the time. So
what made you,
obviously,
what made you decide to stay? Because that obviously, like, you had a lot of back and forth. So what was the deciding point?
I think there were two things. I think one is chalk it up to my personality, chalk it up to whatever you want to chalk it up to. But I wanted the challenge, and I wanted that, to be in the best in my eyes at the time, to be a part of the best. And I didn't want to reduce my standards for the sake of making it easier. I wanted to keep my standards, and I believed that this was the best, agency for me in that way, which is ego, right? Which is all sorts of things, but it's also my personality. Like if I'm going to do it, I'm all in, and I wanted to be all in it. So I didn't want to walk away and do something that was easier because this was hard. I wanted to go through it and endure, because I know on the back end of all that, I'll appreciate it much more than if I just punt now. And then I think the second reason was I truly believed and still do in what UTD stood for, right? And what UTD was doing. And UTD is kind of a black flag, a Jolly Roger in the scuba industry, of DIR diving, and it's pioneered a bunch of stuff that nobody knows UTD pioneered, and has done it just because they needed to, not because it was something cool to do. And so that spirit of entrepreneurship, that spirit of kind of the Jolly Roger, is something I'm just aligned with in general. And so it made sense for me to stay and to continue along that path. So we could do a whole episode on that whole why UTD for me. But again, I don't think it matters the agency. Now, this could have been a story with GUE, it could have been a story with Patty or Nowie or any of the agencies. I think the lesson for me was, hey, becoming an instructor is hard, and there are ups and downs, and you have to really look yourself in the mirror, because you're not doing it for the fame and glory and money that awaits, right? You're doing it because it's a passion of yours. And for me, I had that moment. I had that, face the dragon in the hero's journey moment, where it was, do I want this, and can I endure? And do I think I have what I need to actually come back home, which is the end of the hero's journey, after facing the dragon, and be better for it, be a better human being for it, be a better diver for it, be a better instructor for it. And the answer to those questions was yes. So I stayed. And looking back again, I'm very glad I did. So that was kind of my journey, ups and downs, all kinds of things. And I became a dive master at first and coach, and was teaching a bunch of students around that. And then from there, I'll never forget, I was in Florida doing a Tech 1 training, and the training director for UTD, his name's Ben Boss, and James were there as our instructors. And at the end of the course, they were, we all went out to dinner like we did every night, and we were chatting and whatever it would be. And it wasn't a particularly great diving day. It's tech's hard. We'll talk about that next one. And tech's dependent upon your team members. So you could have a great day, but the team had a terrible day. And so we went through that experience and feeling down. And I remember the train director at dinner saying, hey, why aren't you teaching more open water classes? I was like, Ben, dude, like, why I'm not teaching class. I can't. He's like, well, you should be teaching more open water classes. I'm like, dude, I can't. I'm a dive master. I can take certified divers in the water, and that's as far as I can go. And he's like, no, you really should be teaching more. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, God, like, okay, yes, you're right. I will, as soon as I'm an instructor. He's like, no, you dunce. You're not getting it. Why don't you, when you go home, teach your first open water class? It's like, oh, wait, but that would mean I need to be an instructor. Yes. He goes, so what are you, he's like, yes, yes, congratulations. You have passed. You're officially signed off. I had my first sign off before. Ben was my second sign off at the end of that course. Totally not something that I saw coming. But they had been working in the background to evaluate me during the course. And so, yeah, I became a UTD instructor in the Florida Keys at a little restaurant, and with a manatee swimming below us.
Cute.
And went home after that trip as a full card carrying UTD foundational instructor, and haven't looked back since.
Interesting. So in UTD, you don't have like outside people come in and check you, like test you?
So it's an evaluation, um, sign off basically.
Mm.
There needs to be an initial sign off from whoever your IT is.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, my IT was was Jeff Seckendorf, the CEO of the company, and they need to see you in lots of scenarios. So I did a lot of different types of diving, a lot of different scenarios with students, a lot of different things that I had to be involved in on top of the academics and the lectures and everything else. My personal skills, a lot of critical skills with students. And then we asked that there's a second sign off from another IT to fully sign off on that person becoming an instructor, and that I think is designed to ensure that the quality of what we do is maintained,
Mm.
and so you have different eyes on it. So in my case, I actually had 3 ITs working around me, which were James and Ben and Jeff, and they were having conversations about where my growth path was and where I needed to focus and so on and so forth. And like I said, I got my second sign off there in Florida without pursuing it. Right, it wasn't
Yeah.
something that I was there for, but it's something that came out of it.
Yeah. Can I'm having a total squirrel moment of like you said something and
Yeah,
it's um I've heard you talk about UTD and there are a lot of at least what I'm perceiving as men's names.
sure.
Are there women like I just haven't heard or seen a lot of women in UTD.
That's a great question. So the short answer is yes, absolutely, and they are awesome.
Okay.
One of them, her name's Kim, lives up the road here, and she is an amazing diver, and did this whole presentation on diving in Antarctica and all the things that they went
Oh,
through with
sick.
that. Fascinating stuff, and she does a lot of work with, I think, ghost net removal. That's her
Mm,
main job. But she's no longer instructing. She's still an instructor, but she decided to stop teaching courses. And there are a lot of other women. Tanya Cook, that's out in the Maryland area, who runs the shop there. It's her shop. She owns the shop there as a UTD
mm,
instructor. UTD is also very small.
yeah.
So we probably are representative of the industry in terms of male female split, but at a very small level, in the
Yeah.
sense that, um, I can name them by names, right? In some ways, and we have an incredible batch of instructors in Europe and in Asia as well that I haven't had a chance to meet one on one. But yeah, it's a good question. I think likely we're representative of the industry at large,
So like kind
and
of a what is it right now? Like a 60-40 sort of split?
somewhere around there would be
Somewhere around
where I
there.
think we'd be. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe it's like a 65, uh, 35 split type thing, and that's a shame. That's something that I think should change, and I don't think UTD by any means is, purposely that way.
Right.
Nor do I think it has a male machismo like feeling to it, or any of those things. I wouldn't have joined the company if that was the case.
Right.
Um, but I do think that it's something that we and the industry, on the whole, has to look at, and
Yeah.
we have to say, be honest about it. And I would love more women instructors. I think women instructors are incredible. And I've been around so many amazing female divers. Yeah. And I've had lots of female divers as students and as coaching clients. And it's interesting because there is a network of, I remember the first question I got where I was like, I don't know the answer to that, was like putting on a dry suit neck seal with long hair. I
Mm.
was like, honestly, I've never even thought of that. And I'm sorry that I never thought of it, but it's not something I've experienced. Like, let me call Kim and put you and Kim in contact, and you can ask her any of those sorts of questions, because I don't have the answer. Rather than me say, let me call Kim. Like, no, you guys, and hey, if you want to go work with Kim, great. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those, I think, balancing things that I think a lot of instructors, and this is maybe off the beaten pathway of my journey, And now we've talked about my journey for half an hour, but
No, it's all good. It's all good. No, I was just
I think,
curious. We don't need to go into. I just the little bit that I've heard of UTD is only from you, to be completely honest. And I just and I met the team at DEMA, and it was a bunch of dudes.
it's a bunch of guys. Yeah, there. Yeah, you didn't meet Tanya at DEMA?
No,
I don't know if I remember introducing you to her. Anyways,
no.
yeah. Look. My goal with UTD is to grow it, and the right people for us has nothing to do with gender or race or anything like that. It's all mindset.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah,
people that are attracted to UTD are, and where UTD serves, I think divers best is if you are committed to getting better, and you have that little drive in you, like I had, that you want to be the best. I mean, I'll just say it, that you want to at least have your ego stroked in that way. You think, if that's important to you, then UTD is great, right? It's going to hold you to those standards. It's going to push you. It's going to challenge you. It's going to, all those things. And so, for me, the mindset is the most important, and to be a little bit avant-garde, a little bit, willing to try new things, a little bit willing to deal with maybe the unpaved paths that come up in a journey like I was on or others go on. I think that's who we serve well.
Yeah. What so since becoming an instructor, have you done further instructor training, kind of like in the PADI system, it would be, teaching specialties and becoming, an MSDT, master instructor, IDC staff, that kind of stuff. Have you pursued any of that?
Yeah. So with UT, it's a little bit different in the sense that when you become a foundational instructor, you're signed off on a set of courses that you can teach, and that has to do with your proficiency with those things. Not, it's not kind of I think the traditional standards say something along the lines of like a teach one level below where you're certified, outside of technical. So there's a separation between foundational instructor, which is kind of the recreational courses, technical instructor, and IT are kind of the three buckets that our instructors fall into. Within the foundational instructor, you are able to teach courses one level below where you are currently certified, based on proficiency. So, for example, I've taught a bunch of side mount, taught a bunch of back mount, mini, like we call them minis, not specialties, right. But back mount stuff, SMB stuff, bunch of essentials, those sorts of things. I have not taught technical. That's what I'm working towards. And cool. Within our standards, it's 2 years from when you're a foundational to where you can qualify as a technical instructor to even try for that. And for me, I've done a lot of what you would call apprenticing underneath our training director. And so I've gone on to courses and technical courses and things, and basically been an observer and swimming air or swimming gas, right? If needed, but trying to, again, and I think the big thing for me in all of this, and this was the realization that maybe is helpful for those that are listening to our journeys out there. For me as a instructor, a trainer, coach, all those things that you can in my non-scuba life, I can walk into a room of a team working. Within a few minutes, I know what's happening, right? I can understand the dynamics. I can read what's happening with the room. I can read the leaders. I can read these things. And it's just a matter of, I have a lot of experience doing that. And it traces all the way back to, I grew up in a very angry household where the response to mistakes was anger. So I had to learn how to read a room. I had to learn how to read the mood. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. And so it's a muscle I built for years. I can see the game so clearly up here on the surface with whatever it is, with other human beings. What's interesting is I saw, once I got into the water with experienced instructors, how they saw the game, and I wasn't there yet. I couldn't get underwater and see 3 steps in front of the students yet. I couldn't get underwater and come up to the surface and tell you, here's the next 3 things that's going to happen. I just didn't see the game yet. And it had to do a lot with not enough experience of seeing the game. So I spent a long time, just observing, not teaching, just observing, trying to see the game, trying to say in my head, play it out 3 steps ahead and see what happened. I mean, I volunteered as a dive master for all sorts of things that was just like get in the water and be, an extra set of eyes and for free and carry our tanks and do this and that other thing, just so I could get in the water and see the game. And that's where my work was, right? And that's what I did. And I did it consistently. And I tried to just understand so that when I get under the water now and I have students in front of me, I'm 3 steps, 5 steps, however many steps in front of them, because that's where my brain needs to be. And I'll give a quick example. It's kind of a funny example from a recent course, but
Okay.
We were working through an essentials course, which is essentially repeat that sentence. It is kind of the foundation of personal skills that you need to build. And a lot of people come into essentials, as pretty experienced divers, a couple hundred dives underneath their belt, lots of different sea cards. And they go, I know I have all these qualifications, but I know I'm not where I want to be. And there's a gap, and I'm going to take a chance that maybe you can fix this gap. And essentials is incredible at that. That's what it does. And so anyway, I was with these students. We were working through shooting an SMB, which an SMB in and of itself, it has a procedure to it, so on and so forth. But really what it's testing at that point is positioning, your buoyancy skills, your positioning, your fitting technique. Can you hold position while task loaded? That's what it's really testing. It's not testing the procedure, the protocol of shooting an SMB. As an instructor, for me, I don't care so much that you get every step right in the protocol. I care more that you understand the context in which we use the protocol and that you can do it under control. So if you, unbungee the thing, the SMB before you do, clip off, those things can be fixed with procedures. I'm looking at, are you in control? Do you understand why we're shooting it now? All of those sorts of things. So of course, your first time being asked to be neutrally buoyant, hold position, why you go through this procedure. Most students, it's a struggle. It's a lot of task loading to think of all these steps and do this thing and to do it neutrally buoyant and all that stuff. And so these particular students, it's coming. So I'm watching and seeing the game. They start to work on the bag. The other students, while that person's shooting the bag, should be there. We also talk about an SMB as a team drill. It's a team activity. It's not an individual activity. So where should you be? You are now the point of reference for your teammate while they're task loaded. So hold your buoyancy, hold your position, be supportive of the teammate while they're task loaded. So of course the other one can't hold position. So he's swimming this way and the other one's swimming that way. And right, it's just kind of, swirling around, and which is to be expected. If you come and take an essentials course and this is your experience, that's probably 95% of the people's experience in the first drill here. And we work from there. So I already saw this is what's happening. We work through everybody, shoot their SMB. And I knew these guys have no idea where they are. We're in 20 feet of water on the shore and they have no clue where we are, right? There's no way. So now what can I do to drive that point home? Well, if it wasn't essentials, I would inflict some sort of an incident. I'd give somebody an out of gas and they need to establish an exit and get out of there. In essentials, we don't do those critical skills, right? As a team, right? That's a step too far for essentials. So instead, I said, well, what can I do? This is all under the water, seeing the game, knowing where their brains are at, knowing, all that stuff. I just said, hey, stop for a second. Look at me. Hey, question. Where's the exit? How do we get out of here? Open water, ocean. The shores only goes one direction. Not a complicated navigational decision. I said, hey, where's the exit? And they're looking at me like, well, you should know. And I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. And so they look at each other. One looks at his compass, right? They're all kind of sitting there. And then all of a sudden it's like one guy gives a signal. It's that way. And the other two are like, yeah, of course it's that way. Okay, yeah, that guy must know what he's talking about. Let's go. So all I did was watch them swim off, hold my compass up, shoot it in the video, shoot them swimming off. Now, in California, the exit's east, right? It will always be east because that's the direction of the land. And here these guys are swimming south, and off they go south, right? So I just got it on camera. I gave them a few minutes to see if they'd catch themselves. Someone would say, "Oop, nope, it's actually the other way." Nope, kept swimming. So I caught up to them, stopped them, said, "Hey, now I'm the captain. We're going up." And I said, got up to the surface, and I was hard on them. I
Yeah.
said, "This is how divers die. You got task loaded. Yeah, it happens in a dive. Then you got presented with a question, and you use groupthink. You just relied. It was trust me dive. The first guy to say it was that way. No one confirmed.
Yeah.
So you had confirmation of communication, but not confirmation of the actual decision. This is how you die." And so, I was really hard on them, and I said, "Look, here's where you guys were going." "Well, we were." "Nope, don't give me any excuses. Wait till you see it on the video. You're swimming south." "Well, it was kind of southeast." "Okay, I don't want to hear southeast. I want to hear, yes, it was a mistake." So get your asses back on shore, right? Let's go. You're going to change tanks, get your heads in the game, whatever you have to do, right? And get back in the water, and let's do this again. And they looked at me like, holy crap, this guy's really, down our throats. And I was, because I believe that moment was a very teachable moment of like, they weren't going to die. I was going to let them swim south till they hit Mexico, blah, 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 right? But it was a moment where, hey, in a real life situation, and this is just shooting a bag. Let's say there actually is a failure of some sort. You need to drive this home that, look, I need to at least reestablish my thinking brain. And two, I can't just trust what my teammate says. I need to confirm.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a great moment for them. They talked about it and so on and so forth. But that's the layer of training that we try to get to and what we do, and why my IDC and my path, I think, was so hard, is that you've got to be able to be 3 steps, 5 steps ahead of those students. And you have to be able to see the moments that are teachable and the moments that are not, that you just need to step in, and the moments that, where, hey, you let them make the real mistake and let the consequence play out. And that's where the tech game, when working towards that as an instructor, for me personally, that's the next level of the chess game, is trying to figure out how to put a team in a situation where you can get the sorts of reaction to pressure test a diver on something that maybe they need to be pressure tests on. I wouldn't say I know that game yet. I think I understand it as a student really well, and I can see it as an instructor, but I don't know exactly how to put the chess pieces on the board yet and make that happen. And so with recreational and the foundational stuff and all that, yeah, I feel pretty confident there. But the tech game, that's where I'm still growing. And eventually I hope to grow into an IT. I need to grow into an IT as part of the owner of the company.
Cool.
But yeah, that's my goal. So
well,
a lot about
that's
me.
Good,
my goodness.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It's interesting. I, again, don't know much about that organization. But that's a good segue to our episode for next week, where we're going to be talking about our tech diving experience. So we can dive more into your experience with that as a student and what you're going through to get that training as an instructor. And I'll share my nonsense story as well.
Well, I hope it wasn't too much, but it was a long journey, and I can say, looking back, it was all worth it. And like I think we were joking about on another episode, that in retrospect, that slowing down and being patient is so important. And at the time, it felt so terrible. And so I think that's just part of the journey, part of what I experienced, and I'm glad I went through it.
No, that's really cool, because I'll say, just going right into my experience, I did the opposite. I was not patient. I did not go slow, and I think it impacted me negatively for a long time. And so, I mean, I shared in the last episode that I did a Zero to Hero program in Thailand, mostly because I was just there for the fun of it. I didn't think I was going to do anything. I had a career. I had, my degree in winemaking, and I was going to go be a winemaker in California and whatever. And I just had this little break in Thailand to become a dive master. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Unlimited diving. And I tell people all the time, like, even if you never want to work a day in this industry, that's kind of the difference between what you've experienced and Patty. Like, Patty is much more flexible, right? Like you can do a dive master and get all of the beautiful experiences and the teachings and everything without like being so, I don't want to say like, because there's still dedication and passion, right? But it's a more accessible course. You can take it and
Yeah.
be super focused on like, I'm going to be a professional, I'm going to work in this, or you could take it as like, I just want to learn as much as I can as a diver and get a great experience out of this in a beautiful place somewhere in the world, you know? So I think that's something that's really cool for the other organizations that are more mainstream is that flexibility, because I recommend to people like, you can take, if you can take a sabbatical from work and go live somewhere for 2 months and do the dive master course, like do it, do it. You don't have to work as a dive master ever, but you're going to learn so much and have a blast. And that was my mindset going into the dive master. Now, looking back, uh I wish I had taken it more seriously. I wish that, I mean, I still studied because I'm a nerd. I was an honor roll, AP course, like giant nerd. I graduated from college with honors. That's just like my personality. I like reading and learning. Um, so there wasn't so much that, but I didn't learn, and I still struggle with this sometimes, a lot of the places where I focus in certain areas and not in others. So like I'm still, and I've said this for probably the last year and a half, like I'm still not very educated when it comes to equipment. I need to learn more about that. Specifics about the ID, marine animal ID and like their biology and everything. Like I want to learn so much, but at the same time, it's like there's so much to learn. Like,
Yeah.
and we all have to work and like do all this life stuff. So it's a balance. It's a balance. But I do wish that back then I had started, you know, taking it more seriously. But I didn't know. I was like 24, so
Yeah.
whatever. So I did that experience. It was great. Um, I find that, and I say this as a recommendation for people looking into a dive master course, like it's a good idea to at least try to talk to who the dive master mentors are going to be, because that's going to greatly impact what you get out of the course, right? Who's the course director? Who are the mentors? Because a regular open water scuba instructor can teach dive masters, right?
Oh,
Like they're
really?
going to they're going to be yeah, they're going to be with them training,
Hmm.
and it's I know that there were definitely moments in my dive master course where I didn't feel uh like my instructors were really interested
Hmm.
in being there. Like there was a big drinking culture and everything. And I remember at one point it was like, if I want to talk to my dive master mentor, like I need to sit at the bar, you know?
Hmm.
And that's not like, that's not a great look. But that's the culture of certain places. So it's really important to do your research and find a spot and a shop and a team that suits what your goals are, right? That's part of the reason why when me and my business partners opened Azul Unlimited in Indonesia, we chose Labuan Bajo for the diving in the Komodo National Park. We chose that specifically because we wanted to go into it um, training dive masters and instructors. Like
And that's a more
that's
challenging place to dive, right?
oh my
Which is
god.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, like trying to keep a group together when there's strong currents, like good luck.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and you learn a lot about the ocean and everything. So that was like all part of our mindset with opening the shop over there. And I think it was a big sales point for us, even in the short amount of time that we were open there before the world shut down in 2020. We grew with every single IDC. Like our name was getting out there. And I think that's part of it, making sure that you sign up for it in a place where you're going to get the experience that you want. Not saying that
Yeah.
those kinds of conditions are right for everybody. Um, but knowing the team and the culture of the team is a really important point. Getting a good vibe. A lot of course directors will have a phone call with you, or the dive shop staff will connect you with whoever the senior instructor is. It's usually you can get that kind of service when you're looking to sign up for a dive master course. So again, I did not do that. I share this information so that hopefully someone does it better than I did.
So
um,
can I ask a quick question
yeah,
here?
yeah,
Looking back, when you say, do your research, what are the things that you wish you had researched, or that you would tell yourself back when you were starting your journey? Hey, look into X, Y, or Z. Like you mentioned, the culture of the team and the course director, the location. Are there other things that maybe if someone's out there considering this, that you would say, hey, do the research on these things if you want? Because I think one of the things for me that I'm hearing you say is like, you guys purposely made it not more difficult artificially, but made it more challenging than maybe the bathwater that you got your dive master in, because you wanted to build some of that. I'm assuming I'm putting words in your mouth here. That resiliency or that experience with your professional people that you were teaching. So, are there other things that, looking back, you would say, like, because I'm okay coming out and saying it should be harder to be a dive master. Like
yeah,
it should be hard,
yeah,
like not easy. But
yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'm hearing some of that, but I'm curious what you would look back and say.
Yeah. I think other things to look out for is how active the dive shop is, right? So, like, if it's a boat operation, like you can only go boat diving, making sure that the shop actually goes frequently so that you can be on the boat.
Mm,
Uh, Also, how many dives are included in the Dive Master? Some programs offer unlimited diving, some only offer like 40 dives, right? So, I think that's a big one to look into. Some, and to look at the reality of it, right? A program might say, "Oh yeah, unlimited diving, it's great." And they're not very busy. Or maybe they're always too busy and there's never room for you on the boat, right? So
hmm.
it can go the opposite direction. So those are the questions that I would ask in that. Um, the other thing, like, going back to agencies, and this is where I will toot the Patty horn, right? Because I think Patty is a really strong, smart decision to go with if you want to work in, around the world, really. Um,
Yep.
if you want to work as a dive master, it's a little bit more challenging because a lot of places will hire local dive masters. But moving into the instructor side of things, there are Patty dive shops everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a very strategic choice in order to have a wide range of opportunities for work in the future. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I went Patty, for a multitude of reasons, but that's a big one. Trying to have a job and pay for life is hard. We've discussed this, and so having opportunities in front of you and also the support of such a large staff, it it's really quite nice, right? You have any questions and you're going to get answers very, very quickly with Patty, just because they have such a huge team. So, yeah, I think those are the main things. I'm probably forgetting some stuff, but that's what I really look for with the Dive Master course. Um, as far as moving to instructor, an important question to ask is, if you're meeting your course director and you've talked to them, you've discussed how the course goes, everything, you need to ask how much the course director is actually teaching.
Hmm.
Because myself, as an IDC staff instructor, I can teach most of that course. just about all of it, right? So you could be signing up for a course with a course director and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to learn from this person. And then they're there for the introduction and like a handful of lectures or in water sessions. And then you're with some IDC staff person that you have no clue about. Right.
Hmm.
So it's important to ask that, like, what are you going to be teaching? What are the staff instructors going to be teaching? Who are your staff instructors? What are their experiences? To really get an idea of what you're signing up for and what you're going to gather. And it's good to, I think, it's good to take courses in places that have different conditions. Like, unless you're a local, California is a great example, right? Like, you dive all the time in Monterey and you're always going to dive in Monterey. You want to work in Monterey, like, go ahead, take the IDC, take the instructor development course in Monterey. That's totally cool. Like, that's your shtick, stick with it. But if you're looking to travel the world and do this, I think it's really nice to go somewhere new, right?
Hmm.
Because you're going to get exposed to people with different experiences. You're going to dive in a different place. And, it's just a good thing. Like we talked about in the last episode of recreational diving, it's that experience of exposure, going out and learning from different conditions and people. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe to build on that too, the thing that triggered me too, going back to what you were saying with the decision around Patty from a professional standpoint in terms of opportunity. I'll be honest, I went through that, in my local diving where I could work conceivably. It was like, look, they're all, these big box scuba shops, and they're not going to bring me in as UTD dude to come and
Mm-hmm.
teach in their shop. I mean, which I think is a shame, but this is not the episode to talk about that. So I had to make that decision. And for me, again, I was lucky in the sense that, I wasn't looking at scuba as a next career at the time.
Yeah.
It was a vocational thing, which I think it is for a lot of people. And so I remember going through this, having some conversations. And one of the things that came out in some of those conversations was, well, if you go a different direction, you're likely going to be asked to teach things that you no longer dive, or styles that maybe you're not aligned with. You okay with that? And I was like, no, I'm not. And that was easy to make that call from there of like, I want to teach how I dive. And so again, I think that's a real consideration. And it goes back to, I think, something maybe even bigger, which is, what are your goals? Are your goals, to be a professional in the industry and make a living in it? Is it a vocational fun thing to do? Is it, like you were saying with getting to dive master, is it your own personal education, just deepening that in a
Mm-hmm.
more structured way, right? Like, I think thinking about, the old joke, I'm sure you've heard this as a dive shop owner, how do you build $1 million a year dive shop? And you know the punchline there?
Start with 2.
Start with 2 million. It's
Yep.
like, I don't think I know any instructors that are like, or maybe I know of like one or two instructors that are like living the high life off of scuba instruction. I definitely don't know any dive masters that are like, I'm good. Like, in terms of like financially, I think there's a lot of other things that come up from those experiences that are much more valuable than, let's say, money. But it's not. Let's just be real. Scuba is not an industry that you get into the professional ranks and it's like becoming the CEO of a company, or the a higher up executive somewhere.
Yeah, not
It's
even
still hard
close.
work.
It's not even close.
It's not a lot of money. Yeah, exactly.
you're
So
you're the grunt. You're the grunt, right?
yeah,
Like, and we're trying to change that. At least that's something that I'm aiming to do. Like, I was just telling you before we hit record that I'm putting together a marketing and business course for scuba divers, an online course, because I want more people to be successful in this industry. It's crazy. Like, we all need to be making more money, like,
I
hands
agree.
down.
I agree.
Um, but anyway, that was kind of a roundabout. Going back to my experience, and this is going to be a long episode, dude. Uh, but
Split it into two.
yeah, So I did the dive master course, and then I went to California because that's, again, I was going back to my job. And with over 100 dives in that bathtub, my first dives in Monterey were a joke, honey. Like, it was zero visibility. I was diving with another, he had done the dive master in Kotal with me. So we were like two warm water divers, not, we had no idea what was going on. And it was shocking. It was shocking and humbling to be like, wow, I know nothing about this sport. I do not know how to handle these conditions. So I spent the next year just like diving in California, getting to know the conditions and how to deal with shore diving in the cold and just all of the things, because I needed to. I needed to soak all of that in. During that time, I think I got my yoga teacher training, and realized that I like teaching. I wasn't sure
Mm.
that I would. My dad is a teacher, so he thinks it's really funny that I'm into teaching now, because I was always like, ugh, I don't want to be a teacher. But I did. I found out that I love teaching. And so that planted the seed of like, okay, I want to do my IDC. And I decided to go. I don't really remember. It might have been a recommendation from somebody. I went to Playa del Carmen, and that's I've looked up the course, and it seemed great, and I just decided to go. And so that was just a temporary thing. I went for 2 or 3 weeks just to do my IDC, but it really set in my brain like, wow, maybe this could be something, right?
Mm.
And I went back home. I kept working my normal job and whatever. And it was like, at some point, I decided that I was going to try it, right? Because I was at a crossroads of like, I could stay in my career, or I could try this totally crazy thing and pursue yoga and scuba diving. And so I decided to save up for a long time, because I knew that doing something like that, I may not be making a lot of money for a while. So I've made that my focus. I was saving, saving, saving. And then I moved to Mexico. I moved to Playa del Carmen. And there I started teaching. In the meantime, I had been teaching in California, and I assisted several courses, because, again, I still was so new to how challenging it is to teach in California. Like, it's really, you know this, like, it can be so hard on those low vis days, and the waves and everything. It's a challenge. People that learn there really learn a lot about diving just in that short course. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I started working over there, and I went through, I think I ended up doing my MSDT for PADI, so Master Scuba Diver Trainer. A lot of times people will do IDC and MSDT together. It's like a package that PADI usually tries to get you into when you're doing the course. And that just means that you get specialty instructor training for 5 specialties.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask.
Sorry, that,
So
yeah,
you then to become a master, what is it? Master scuba
diver diver trainer.
diver
Yeah.
trainer. Okay.
Yeah.
To become that, you have to then go through and earn specialties in 5 other things.
You have
Is
to
that,
have
am I understanding that
instructor,
correctly?
yeah, you have to have instructor level training in 5 different
Ah, okay.
specialties. So like
Okay.
some IDC courses will offer a couple of specialties as part of the IDC course, right? Like that's something extra, as a way to get people to sign on, right? And that gets you on
Gotcha.
the path to become a master scuba diver trainer. And I mention that because in some places, because of the culture in the place, uh, dive shops will only want to hire you if you are an MSDT, because what does that do? It encourages people to sign up for the course when they're doing the IDC.
Got it.
Does that make sense? It's
Got,
kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's to get people into that. I didn't do that at first. That was the only time that I didn't rush into something during my training. But I just didn't need to. I knew that with California, so it just wasn't like a priority for me at the time. So the one time I slowed down, yeah, I waited a year to become a MSDT. And and then soon after moving there, I got together with my ex business partner, and he was on the pathway to become a course director. And so I very quickly went through the steps of becoming an IDC staff instructor. And again, did it too fast. I should have spent a lot more time in that instruction, going through just teaching the recreational courses over and over and over again. But in my life, there have been a lot of like just opportunities have shown themselves, and I've jumped on them instead of saying like, "Oh, I'm not quite ready for that. I should wait until the next time." Like I've just said, "Well, it's here, let's go." And
Yeah.
whether that's good or bad, I paid for it. I definitely didn't have when I started teaching instructor courses, I didn't have the experience. Oh, we lost a light. Remember what that means? We're getting to our limit here. But what I found was I did not have the experience when I first started assisting with IDCs. I really should have spent more time. And so that's why I'm really happy to be back assisting IDCs now, because I feel like I'm an actual IDC staff instructor. Like
Mm.
not that, I mean, I still have so much to learn, like so much, but I feel like I can actually give a lot to students, you know? Um, so that was my pathway with it. It was just a lot of jumping ahead too fast and then dealing with the consequences of um, imposter syndrome, right? Like I
Mm.
would be in this role of like being the head instructor and leading the dive master course and not feeling like I should be there,
Mm.
and I shouldn't have, to be completely honest. I shouldn't have. Like I definitely needed a lot more experience to be in that position. But it's not, I wouldn't say that it completely negatively impacted, but I look at it now and I'm like, I would have done a lot better. Like I would have given more value to those people if I were teaching, if I were in that role today, you know?
Mm.
So that's my experience through the courses. I've had people ask whether I've thought about becoming a course director, and going back to business, the business of diving, right? When you decide to go a certain path, you have to weigh the financial bit of it, right? Like, what does it take for me to get to that level? What am I going to be making after
Mm-hmm.
that? Like, is it going to balance out in a way that makes sense to a business? And for me, it's just never panned out in the calculations. I have enough
Right.
friends who are course directors. It's kind of like having a boat. You want you want your friend to own the boat. You don't actually want to own the boat. You know, like that's what I think of. Like I'm really, really happy
Or
as an
just buy the
IDC.
agency
Yeah,
outright, right?
there you go. Yeah, right. Um, like for me as an IDC staff instructor, I love that role. I love being the backup dancer to the center stage person, like making things happen and helping people. And just because my name isn't on the certifying paperwork, like it doesn't mean that I'm not a part of it. Like I don't need that. And that's just
Mm.
me personally. It's because I know that I'm not going to dedicate my life to teaching IDCs, and I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
make that investment back, because it's a big investment. It's like a serious
Mm-hmm.
decision to be a course director, or, I don't know what the investment is for UTD, but it's a really big effing deal. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that it's just never made sense for me. I'm not saying that it won't make sense for me, like I'm totally open to doing something like that in the future. Life has changed so much in the last 3 years. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 years, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, I just know that from my experience now, I don't want to, not that I would be rushing into things now like 10 years in, but um that's definitely been my downfall through my career of being around a lot more talented divers and with people who have a lot more experience. And I just got like shoved into the group and like, all right, you're hanging out with us, like, let's go. And usually I can hang to a certain point, right?
Sure.
But there comes that, like you were discussing about understanding, what did you say? It was seeing the game.
Yeah.
You can't rush that. There's no
Yeah.
rushing that ever. Like,
No.
you just have to have the time and the experience. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway, or my biggest recommendation, besides all the stuff that I talked about with choosing courses, is slow down, take your time with it.
Yeah. I think it's good advice. I mean, you said something there that, again, I love the feeling of the imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Do you remember your first open water course where it was just you, where you were the lead instructor? Can you remember that one?
Oh gosh. I'm trying to remember who was my actual like first, because it's a little hazy for me because I did do co-teaching for a
Okay.
bit.
Or it was just
And
you and the
so,
students? Do you
I
remember
mean,
that one?
oh gosh, I'm not, so this is, my memory's terrible. But I will tell you of one that was like, it wasn't super early on, but I think it was the worst conditions I've ever taught in, ever. And I remember thinking like, oh good god, I had 3 students, it was zero visibility, we only had that weekend to do it, right? And luckily they were all friends of mine and yogis, so they were able to like, we all kind of came together and like, this
Center.
is gonna suck,
Yeah.
it's gonna be really hard, we need to stay relaxed, right? And we got through it together. But I don't know why that popped into my brain. It's definitely not my first course. I'm gonna have to think about that. How sad that I
Yeah.
don't have that in my brain straight away. Let's hear
Yeah.
yours.
That imposter syndrome thing, I think, is a really nice way to sum up. I hope I never feel, I hope there's always a tinge of that for me in my
Mm,
instruction, because I think it keeps you on your toes.
yeah.
The minute you feel like, oh, I got this, that's the beauty of teaching, is that no two classes are ever the same. No two
Right.
students are ever the same. There's always adaptation, always growth. But I just remember, it's akin to when when my wife had our first daughter. And I remember leaving the hospital after however many days you're supposed to spend there. And I remember getting on the freeway, and they put her in our car, like I was driving home. And it's like, I'm not licensed to do this. Like what? They're like, what do you mean I can take? Like I felt, it sounds silly, but I honestly felt like I was doing something illegal, which sounds silly now. Like, but I did not feel qualified to take a
Hmm.
kid home. It was like, are you kidding? This is happening, and we're getting on the freeway, and you feel. I think you feel that way for your first year of parenthood period. But I remember the same feeling, or a similar feeling, with my first open water students, of like, you have the time in the pool with them, which is a nice structure to a course, right? Because
Hmm.
it's pretty, relatively safe in the pool compared to open ocean. But like you say, you take them into the water, and it's open water, and it's like, do I know what I'm doing?
Hmm.
You know, oh, and to be honest with you, sorry students, if you're listening to this, and I remember kind of feeling like, hey, everyone survived and got back. Like, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was the first metric. I'm okay. Like I did
Yeah.
it. But yeah, and I think it just plays on the thing that you're saying about going slower and gaining experience. It's just time under the water. It's time having those, like, silly stories that you and I could sit around a campfire and tell, of things that have happened to us as,
Hmm.
pros, that, are funny now. But at the time, I mean, gosh, I remember one where I was just a dive master, and I wasn't even an official course. It was like dive guiding. And, this couple, the husband and wife, the wife, um, for whatever reason, just would not stop swimming 10 feet above the husband. And like, that's how they dove together. That was their norm. And there was really low visibility, and it was like trying to keep these two together. And it's like, trying to split the difference, all these things. It was really hard. And then all of a sudden I turn around and the wife's gone. And I look at the husband like, dude, where's your wife? Like, I'm not in official capacity here. I'm just here, diving along. And he's like, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Okay, great. So what do I do? Like, okay, you stay right there. Like, don't move. Like, okay. Like, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to look around for a minute. Nope, she's not there. Came back to him and said, you and I are going up. Let's go. We come up to the surface and there she is. And she's like, oh, I did it again. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, I pressed the wrong button. I thought I was pressing let gas out and I pressed the other button. This is, by the way, not in my course, not being trained by me, just, just divers in the wild. And I was just like, okay, we were like 20 minutes into a dive. Okay, I think we're done. Like, the shore's that way. Let's just surface swim back to the shore. Like, we're good. Like,
Funny.
but it's just, you can't manufacture that in
The
any
experience.
IDC.
Yeah. I will say though, and I want to say this for I'm assuming that a lot of the demographic is male, just because that's what my YouTube channel looks like too. But for any women that are listening to this, my experience with imposter syndrome was also related to the dynamic of male and female interaction in the dive shop. And so, something to mitigate that, slowing down, being, doing the training in a pace that feels right, being experience, getting that experience in the water. But also it's a personal development of self-esteem, right? There are a lot of big personalities in diving, and especially in professional level. I've met so many people that just they think that they're God's gift to scuba diving and the best instructor in the whole entire world, right? And I think it's something that's not unique to women, but I think we get hit with it more. Is this like, am I supposed to be here? Like, can I hang here? So, and something that helped me with that was just working on myself, my own self-esteem, and understanding that like I don't do things the same way that my cohorts do, but we're all sticking to standards. I have a different style, and that's going to vibe with certain people, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that because that was part of my experience, especially early on. And I wish that I had had a female mentor, just to give me like an example to look at and be excited to, like, I want to be you. That's something. Anyway, that was kind of a side thing, but it was important to me. It would have been helpful for me.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up because again, like, I think that's a perspective that is important to raise and that often probably doesn't get raised. And I think maybe to the point as well is that's when, you're talking about the culture and the interviewing course instructors and the IDC staff and all
Mm-hmm.
these folks. I really do like our model of apprenticeship at UTD because it is a relationship that gets built deeply around trust over a longer period of time, months and months.
Right.
But I do think, regardless of training, and I think this applies to all training, not just IDC, but it's probably particularly important in IDC and the higher level technical courses and things, is that trust is there, where
Mm-hmm.
you do feel like you have a relationship, where I like that you say, where you do aspire to be like that person, not just as a diver with skills. That's a part of it, but as a human being, observing them as they interact with people, as they order food at a restaurant. I mean, as silly as that sounds, is something I'm paying attention to, right? And I was lucky to have that in the mentors that I've had and continue to have. I'm lucky to still look at them and say, wow, like, I really hope someday I'm half as good as he is in explaining that. or wow, I wish, that my gut instinct response to that situation was that. That's something I can learn from, right? Because I
Well,
would have taken
yeah.
it a different way.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I mean, that's a huge aspect of both the dive master and instructor courses. It's that professionalism, right? It
Mm-hmm.
goes beyond what you're doing in the water. It's really being a role model, and that's important, because that gives people the impression of this industry and the dive shop, the whatever, it leaves an impact. So that's really cool. I feel like this was hopefully will be helpful for people. I feel like we need to wrap it up. We've been blabbing for a long
Yeah,
time. uh
sure. Probably two
but
episoder.
but it's great. Like, again, I wish that this kind of stuff was out there when I was going through um my training and looking at things. I mean, I say that at 24 I probably wouldn't have listened to anyone anyway. So hopefully the younger generation is smarter than I was. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I do think it's never too late, right? And
Yeah.
I think to be a good instructor, it's just because you have that title now. At least this is the way I feel about it. It doesn't mean that I'm done learning how to be a good instructor. There's always something to learn.
Learning
There's
all
always
the time.
experiences, right?
Yeah.
That you can,
My gosh.
just because you're an instructor with X agency doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore other opportunities to be a dive master somewhere else, right? I mean, I think that the professional side of things is about seeing the game.
Hmm.
That's at least my brief summary of it. And there's so many ways to put yourself in a situation to do that.
Yeah.
You talk about crazy Komodo currents versus guiding someone through a cavern, totally different.
Yeah.
Versus shore diving in California.
Good
In the
times.
king tide. Yeah, good luck. So continual learning is so important, and all the principles of getting started, doing your research, building a relationship, all things you
Hmm.
talked about still apply to an ongoing relationship and an ongoing learning. That's we are the grunts as instructors, I think, and the beauty of that is that we also get those gritty experiences, and it makes us better and
Good
makes us stronger. I
stories.
think that's good. Exactly. Good stuff.
Good
All
stories.
right. Well, let's wrap this one up. You're right. And
Yeah.
Daniel's probably going to split it into two episodes, and I think that's a good thing. So I'll wrap it up by saying this. I'm glad I became a professional. Uh, it's such a weird industry in the sense that
Hmm.
professional doesn't mean you're actually good at it. It just means that you could teach it, which we
Hmm.
don't every other, call it sport or activity or whatever, also assumes pro, you become sponsored. But I'm glad for myself that I became a pro, because it's put me in a position to help others have the experience that I wish I had had, and it's also put me in a lot of positions to grow and to see things on my own diving in a very challenging tech dive. To one of the struggles I have is I'm not the instructor in that dive,
Hmm.
so and I shouldn't be. So I'm not the one. I'm a team member. So it gives you some challenges to really figure out and see your own diving, and just open up your eyes a little bit more, and to widen and deepen the experience of diving for you as an individual. I don't think it's a goal to try to achieve as a next step, if that's the next thing on your list. I think you have to love teaching, or should want to love teaching, and should want to be in that position where you're the continual learner, not just, well, the next thing I have on my list is instructor because that's what that list says. I
Yeah,
think that you're going to struggle. So
that's super important. And I tell everybody that, like, not everybody should be an instructor. That I mean,
yeah,
I thought for the longest time that I wouldn't. It was only once I got some experience teaching something else, something completely unrelated, that I was like, oh yeah, that could be for me. Um, yeah, I I agree. Like, hands down, I don't regret. Like, I'm super happy being an instructor. I think it's important to mention that as an instructor, like, there are so many opportunities and ways that life can look. And so getting an idea of what you want your career to look like, it's important to see the variety out there, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be traveling all over the place. You could be part-time, you could be freelance, you could have your own business. There's so many options. And also to keep fun diving. Keep fun
Yes.
diving and doing stuff for you, because if you're only getting in the water to teach courses, you're gonna burn out. And on top of, aside from that tip, um, take breaks if you need to. After everything that happened with 2020 and Indonesia closing down and everything, like I took a full year where, I mean, more than that technically, but I did not pay, like I wasn't an in I dropped my teaching status for a full year because I was in like recovery mode, you know?
Right.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that, when we're needing a break from something. You can still be diving and working on your skills and whatever, but maybe you need a break from teaching. Just those kinds of things. Anyway, let's wrap this up. This was great. Thanks so much. I don't know. What else do we say
Absolutely.
here? Reach
Wrap
out
it
to
all up.
us.
Well, reach out to us. Yes, we should have said that at the beginning. But
Yeah.
hey, I think Sarah and I both, if you want to talk more about maybe your path to becoming an instructor and those sorts of things, of the things that you're struggling with, do I go this direction or that direction, or how do I advance? Like, I think Sarah and I would love to talk to you about that and share more of our experience, if this hasn't been enough, to
Right.
share more and to give our 2 cents. And I think at least I can say this for both of us a little bit, is that we're both passionate about this activity, about diving,
Mm-hmm.
and want to see others that have shared that passion grow in it, whatever direction that goes. So send a message, Jay at thedivetable.com, or Sarah with an H at thedivetable.com, and let us know how we might be able to assist your journey or things that you're struggling with. And if you're not going to be a professional, great. That you don't need to feel any pressure to become that. You've now heard our journeys and our experiences of it. And you just want to be a diver, awesome. We encourage everybody to join the community at the dive table at thedivetable.com, and
Yeah,
become a
and
part
we
of the
have a
conversation.
yeah, and we have a Facebook group too. So if you want to join that and share your experience or your questions there, that would be really rad too.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone
Cool.
out there in the Scubaverse for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Dive Table.
Peace.